Hi, this is Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Intra-Arbor Solutions, and you're listening to BriefingsDirect. Our next data-driven tax optimization discussion focuses on reducing risk and increasing cost efficiency as businesses grapple with complex and often global spend management challenges. We'll now explore how end-to-end visibility of almost any business's tax, compliance, and audit functions can allow for rapid adherence to changing requirements thanks to powerful new tools. And we'll learn directly from two businesses how they are pursuing and benefiting from advances in intelligent spend and procurement management. To uncover how all this pans out, please join me now and welcome our guests. We're here with Sean Thompson, Executive Vice President of Network and Ecosystem at SAP Procurement Solutions. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Hi, Dana. Good morning.
Glad to have you with us. We're also here with Chris Carlstead. He's Head of Strategic Accounts, Partnerships, and Alliances at Thomson Reuters. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Dana. Good to be here.
We're glad to have you. We're also here with Purnima Sadanandan. She's P2P IT Business Systems Lead at Stanley Black & Decker. Welcome, Purnima.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning. Sean, let's start with you. What's driving the need for end-to-end visibility when it comes to taxes and the nitty-gritty details around that? How can businesses reduce risk and increase cost efficiency, particularly in difficult, unprecedented times like these when it comes to better visibility around taxation issues?
Thanks again, Dana. It's a near and dear topic for me because I started off my career in the early 90s as a tax auditor, if you will. So I was doing tax accounting in the early 90s. Then I went into installing SAP ERP systems, and now here I am at SAP and at the confluence of the accounting system and tax and how important that is. And, we always used to talk about risk and, basically staying out of jail, making sure that you're compliant with the various different regulatory agencies in terms of tax. But I think now, and I know Chris is going to talk a little bit later about COVID-19, compliance is also really about helping the governments. The governments now more than ever need companies to be compliant, and they need solutions to be able to drive that compliancy because tax these days is not only needed, especially as we look to fund governments in the future, but also the dynamic changes that are going on with the governments in terms of whether it's reacting to COVID or whether it's encouraging an economic incentive. There's a dynamic nature of tax changes and tax laws, and the cost efficiency that's driven by data-driven systems now to ensure compliancy across accounting systems and the tax authorities. I think that is a fascinating time that we're in because it's ultimately about digitization. It's about bringing together business processes and having the systems and the data that feeds that efficiency. So I think it's a fascinating time to be talking about tax, not only from a compliance perspective, but also from a cost perspective. And here we are in the cloud era and how driving data and business process efficiency through software and through cloud solutions is a very interesting time for us because we're now able to drive efficiencies unlike we've ever done because of artificial intelligence and also because of the advancements that we've got in open systems in the cloud.
Yeah, so Chris, taxation issues and tax requirements have always been there, but what's added stress to this equation nowadays in organizations dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thanks, Dana. I think Sean hit on a really important note there with respect to balance. I think oftentimes people think of taxation as a burden, and it's often overlooked that the other side of that is that governments use that money to fund programs and conduct social welfare and help economies run. And you need both sides in order to operate effectively. And when you have moments like COVID-19, and Dana, you used the word unprecedented, I almost might say that's an understatement. I don't know in the history of our time if we've ever had an event that affected the world so quickly, so instantly, and uniformly like we have in the past few months here. But when you have impacts like that, whether it's of this nature or not, they generally drive government reaction, whether that was 9/11 or whether it was the dot-com bubble or whether it was the financial crisis in 2008. And of course, there's instances all over the globe when governments need to react. Again, this was unprecedented because almost every government in the world acted at the same time and moved to change the way we interact in our economies in order to help support the economy itself. And so while pace of change has always been increasing, we never saw such a moment like we have in the last few months. And it just makes me think about all the folks that are working at home and having just a lot of empathy for them and how they're dealing with these crises. And while the cause was uniform, the impact from country to country or region to region is not equal. And to that end, anything we can do to help make that easier in the transition, we're looking to do. And while tax is maybe not the most important thing in people's lives, it's one less thing they have to worry about when they are able to take advantage of a system like Ariba and Thomson Reuters to help deal with that part of their business while they're working with their families and friends and just in general transitioning to work from home.
Right. And we're certainly going to dig into more detail about the solution of how to improve your situation around these challenging times. But let's go to Purnima. Tell us a little bit about, even before the pandemic, what was the driving requirement? What was the need for at Stanley Black & Decker to get better visibility into your tax issues?
Thanks, Dana. So at Stanley Black & Decker, SAP Ariba procurement application is primarily used for all indirect purchases. And basically, the user base spans across the buyers who do the procurement activities based on organizational requirements to the C-level executives who logs into the application to validate and approve those transactions based on those that cross the specific thresholds. So providing them with accurate data is of utmost importance for us. And we were facing a lot of challenges concerning our legacy applications due to numerous challenges like purchasing categories, federated process control version of the application integrated with multiple SAP instances, and a combination of solutions including like tax rate files, invoice parking, and manual processing of invoices. So there were a lot of points where manual touch was necessary before an invoice could even get posted to the backend ERP application. And there were business impacts due to these situations, including overpay VAT on return, tax penalties, supplier frustrations, and so on. So we needed to have an end-to-end visibility with accuracy and precision to the granular accounting and tax details for these indirect procurement transactions without causing any delay due to the manual involvement in this whole procurement transaction process.
And then just quickly, Purnima, when you do this right, when you get that visibility and you can still be so detail-oriented, what does that get for you? How does that improve your situation there?
So basically, we happen to have many benefits out of this that happen to us, many benefits out of this automated transaction and due to this visibility of data. And there are many, but I'd like to highlight a few here. Basically, it helped us to ensure that we can validate the supplier's charge tax, and also suppliers are adhering to the local tax jurisdiction rules and tax exemptions that are in fact applicable for tax policies at Stanley Black & Decker. Secondly, I think that there is a lot of reduction of manual process involved. Basically, that happened as part of this whole automation or the web service part, as part of this integration framework that we adopted as part of this technology. So tax calculation and determination got automated, and that backend ERP application, which is SAP at our company, is receiving this accurate posting information, and that in fact helped the accounting team that they're able to capture these accounting details from a real-time perspective, and they get good visibility on this financial reconciliations as well. And I think that better exception handling is something that we achieved as part of this. Basically, any exceptions that happen due to tax mismatches are being handled promptly based on the thresholds that's set up in the app, in the system base. So, and also exception reports are also available for us, and that provides better visibility to this exception details, not just to the end users I'm talking here, but even to the technical team who are actually validating any issues. That helps them with the whole analysis process. Finally, I think I should mention this as well, that tax calls basically happen twice in the application, whereas earlier in our legacy application that was happening only at the invoicing stage, but now that this is happening during the requisition phase in the whole procurement transaction process. So with that, what I mean to say is that it provides more visibility to the requisitioners. They don't have to wait till the invoice phase in order to get visibility on what's being passed from the source system. So essentially, requesters as well as the accounts payable team are getting good visibility to the accuracy and precision of the data.
Sean, just as Purnima just pointed out, there are many benefits of doing an improved approach on this and using the tools available. What about regionally, though, around the world? Are there incentives or added benefits from one region to another? How does this differ in the global implications?
Well, As Purnima said, that the accounting made easy, if you will, in terms of tax and not only compliance, but efficiency on a global basis. And the reality is that one of the things that the pandemic has shown us is that whether you're a small company, medium-sized company, large company, your supply chains are global. And that's the way we went into the pandemic. And that's just a statement regarding the regional complexity of having to manage all of that compliance and drive the efficiency so that you can make accounting easy, but you can also be compliant at the same time. And so I think it's interesting that the regional nature of it, I think, is both a cost statement, but it's also a statement regarding the regional incentives that are being driven, and being able to manage that complexity, I think, is what the nature of, like I said before, software and data can make possible.
And how about the size of an organization? Do small to medium-sized businesses benefit as well? Does this scale down as well as scale up?
Absolutely. And I always say that when you look at a small, mid-sized business, and when we focus on the small, mid-sized business, I like that because small, mid-sized businesses need to save money. And oftentimes, small, mid-sized businesses don't have dedicated departments that can handle the complexity. And so from a people perspective, where there's less people, you got to think about how do you make the end-to-end nature of compliance and of accounting and efficiency. You've got to think about the small, mid-sized business. And if you make it easy there, then you can make it easy all the way up into the large enterprise. So it really is segment or size agnostic, if you will.
Chris, as we start to understand and unpack the solution approach now, what are the global challenges for big companies and small companies as it relates to tax calculation and compliance? What are sort of the pain points that are most relevant in your understanding for people grappling with this?
Well, first of all, Dana, if I may just take a second and compliment Purnima, I always love it when I hear customers speak about our applications better than we can speak about them ourselves. So Purnima, thank you for that. And to your question, it is about large and small companies because the impact is the same. It just is relative to the size and their reach. And it does center in around that volume of change and the pace of that change. And so I thought I'd share just a couple of data points that we pulled together inside Thomson Reuters. So if you think about the U.S., so this would affect domestic companies, large and small, as well as multinationals. You've got over 15,000 jurisdictions that impact just this area of tax alone. And within that 15,000 jurisdictions, in 2019, we had over 50,000 changes to the tax rules that you need to comply with in those jurisdictions. And if you think about a small company, that's really difficult. And there are many small companies that operate in many states around the U.S. Now extrapolate that internationally. And while I don't have the exact count on jurisdictions internationally, it's a bit of a harder number to grab. There are about 190 countries. Within that 190 countries that we cover, we had over 2 million changes to tax laws and regulations. And at that scale, it's just impossible to maintain manual processes. And many companies look to do that either decentralized or otherwise. And it's just impossible to keep pace with that. And now you introduce the pandemic and COVID-19, for which we haven't yet seen the full impact in terms of change. But I expect we'll have an incredible year in that particular area. But the impact of that is along the lines where Sean was heading, which is we also expect, and many experts are already suggesting it, that supply chains are going to get reevaluated. And when you start to reevaluate your supply chains, you don't need government regulation to change. You're changing. So you're moving into new jurisdictions. You're moving into new supply routes. And that has huge tax implications, and not just in the area of indirect tax, which is what we're talking about here today on the purchase and sale of goods. But when you start moving those goods across borders in a different route than you have historically done, you bring in global trade, imports, duties, tariffs, and then the problem just magnifies and extrapolates around the globe.
So we want to understand how organizations are going to be entering into new jurisdictions, pursuing different types of doing business. A lot of organizations reevaluating their very nature of their business, just digital transformation types of undertaking. How does Thomson Reuters and SAP Ariba, how does that relationship come together to help people not have to start from scratch, to learn from what's already been put in place, to get the best of a team effort around the data and visibility? Tell me the story of how Thomson Reuters and SAP came together to tackle this.
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I always said to Chris, it's been a team sport all along. And one of the things that we believe in is the power of the ecosystem and the power of partnership, because when it comes down to it, on our side, we are not, if you will, tax centric in the way in which we operate. We need that data in order to power our software. We're about procurement. And in that procure to pay sales process, we need tax, and we need to be able to help our customers manage the complexity. Like Chris said, it's amazing, 50,000 changes in that dynamic nature within one country. And so at Ariba, we have the largest business network of suppliers driving about 3 trillion of commerce on a global basis. And that is a statement regarding just the complexity that you could imagine in terms of a global company operating on a global basis in that trade footprint. Now, when the power of the ecosystem comes in and the power of Thomson Reuters coming together and say, we are the authorities, we are tax-centric in what we do, tax solutions, and also helping companies manage the tax data complexity. And when you can combine that with our software, that's a beautiful interaction, because it's the best of both worlds. I always say it's a win-win-win. It's not only a win for our two companies in Thomson Reuters and SAP, because we're, if you will, making it easier for the end customer. We're making more revenue together, but also the end customer benefits because they get the power of the ecosystem. When you early days bought an iPhone, and the reason why the iPhone won relative to any other phone was because of the App Store. And so when you buy the iPhone and you go into the App Store and you see all these wonderful solutions in the App Store, that's why you're on the iPhone. And that's what we like to think, is that you choose Ariba for its ecosystem, and Thomson Reuters is one of our, if not the most successful App Center extension that we have.
All right, Chris, we've got 2 + 2 equaling 5 here. Tell us about your two. What was Thomson Reuters bringing to this? Tell us about Open API and platform and why this tag team has been so powerful.
Well, I'll tell you, partnerships don't always work. And it really requires two different parties that complement each other, but then also have similar goals in the way they look at the world, the way they look at their customer. And I can, without a doubt, say that when Thomson Reuters and SAP Ariba came together, the first and most important focus was the customer. And that relentless focus on the customer really helped keep things focused and drive forward to where we are today. And that doesn't mean that we're perfect by any means, and I'm sure we've made mistakes along the way, but it's that focus that allowed us to keep the patience and the drive to move forward and ultimately bring forth a solution that helps solve a customer's challenge. And that seems simple in its concept, but when you bring two large organizations together to help try to solve large organization problems, it's a very complex relationship, and it's just simply a lot of hard work. And I'm really proud of the work that the two organizations have done, and SAP Ariba has been amazing along the way to help us solve problems for customers like Black & Decker.
All right, Purnima, you're the beneficiary here, the client. Tell us what's been powerful and effective for you in this combination of elements that both SAP Ariba and Thomson Reuters bring to the table.
So with a history of around 175 years, Stanley Black & Decker has been always moving along with pioneering products with a strong vision of adopting the intelligent solutions for society. So as part of this, adopting the advanced technologies that helps us to fulfill all the company's objectives is always in the forefront. So as I was explaining a few minutes earlier, that we were leveraging the integration framework consisting of SAP Ariba Tax API, communicating with OneSource tax solution in real time using web services. So SAP Ariba Tax API is designed to make a web service call basically to the external tax service provider for this tax calculation. And in turn, it receives a response to update the transactional documents. So during the procurement transactions, the API is invoked and it makes this external tax calculation. And once the tax gets determined, the response is basically converted back per the SAP Ariba message format and XML format basically. And it comes back to this. It gets passed on by the one source integration and sends over to the SAP application. So SAP Ariba Tax API receives the response and updates the transactional documents. So basically the tax call and the response happens here in real time, and that in fact provides a seamless integration between the SAP Ariba procurement solution and the global tax. And in fact, we believe that that's exactly what helped us in automating the entire procurement transaction.
Hey, Sean, I really appreciate what you just said about the business process benefits. But to geek out a little bit for us folks on the IT side of things, this is such a great use case of what you can do when you have cloud services and you have data available through open APIs and you can do real-time calculations. It takes such a burden off of the end user and the consumer. So how is the technology a fundamental underpinning of what OneSource is capable of here?
Let me just say that it's wonderful to hear, like Chris said, Purnima as a customer. It's music to my ears to see the real life use case of what we've been able to do, and especially what we've been able to do today in the cloud. And when you look at the architecture of where we are and how we're able to drive not only a software solution in the cloud, but power that with real-time data to drive efficiencies that we used to dream of when we were back in the days, whether it was an on-premise, if you will, or back in the days when we had to do, God bless us, the paper reconciliations that we had to do and the paper calculations. It's an amazing time to be alive because of where we are and the efficiencies that we can drive on a global basis and be able to handle the kind of complexities that a global company like Stanley Decker has to deal with. And so it's an amazing time. And I think it's even in the early days of what we're able to look out and see in terms of what can we be doing in the future around predictive analytics in terms of helping companies understand maybe where there's more risk or where there's compliance issues ahead of when they actually happen. And I think that that's what's really cool is that we're going into an era now of data-driven intelligence, machine learning, applied to these business processes that combine data and software in the cloud. And so not only is that a deployment deployment statement that's made easy, but it's also software now being able to automate the things that we used to have to do so manually in the past. And so it's a really amazing time for us.
Chris, anything more to offer on the making invisible the technology, but giving advanced business outcomes much more of a boost these days?
I think what's really amazing about where we are right now is, it's a term I often use. I certainly don't believe I coined it, but best of breed suite. So in the past, you used to have to choose. You had to go best of breed, or you could go with the suite, and there were pros and cons to both approaches. But now with the movement forth of the proliferation of APIs, because in and of itself, APIs aren't new, the technology itself, but with the adoption of cloud and the adoption of API technology across software vendors, allowing for a more free flow of information between systems and applications and platforms, you now have the ability as a customer to be greedy. And I think that's a great thing. You are used to it as a consumer to be able to download an app and it just works. And we're a little bit behind on the business side of the house, but we're moving very quickly. And so now customers like Black & Decker can go with the number one spend management system in the world, and they can also go with the number one tax content player in the world and have the expectation that those two applications will work seamlessly together without having to spend a lot of time and effort on their end to kind of force those companies together, which is what we would have done in an on-premise environment over the last several decades. From an outcome standpoint, and as I think about customers like Black & Decker, getting tax right in and of itself is not a value add, but getting it wrong can be very material to the bottom line of your business. So for us and with the partnership with Ariba, our goal is to make sure that customers like Black & Decker get it right the first time so that they can focus on what they do best.
Purnima, back to you for the proof. When you do these things well, when you take advantage of cloud and APIs and you can bring data to bear with platforms on business problems, despite the complexity and the scale and the global nature, what does that kind of get for you? Do you have any anecdotes, qualitative or quantitative measurements of how Stanley Black & Decker has achieved more of what you've wanted to do around processing and accounts payable and procurement?
Yes, of course. So So all the challenges that we had with our earlier existing process with respect to our legacy applications, I should say they got diminished with respect to incorrect VAT returns, wrong payments, delayed payments, and also it strengthened the relationship between business and suppliers. So above all, troubleshooting of any issues became so easier for us because there is profound transparency of what's being passed from the source system. And as you mentioned, this increases supplier relationship from that payments are not getting delayed now. And there is improvement in tax calculation. So, and also if there are any mismatches, we are able to understand easily with respect to how that's happened as the integration layer provides us with the logs for accurate analysis. And business themselves can answer supplier queries on a timely manner as they do have profound visibility to the data as well. And from a project perspective, we believe that the objective as it is fulfilled. So when we started the project in 2018 and when we completed basically by the year of end of 2018, Stanley Black & Decker basically has been moving ahead with an objective of transforming the source to pay process by establishing a core model, leveraging the leading practices in new SAP Ariba realm integrated to the central finance core model utilizing SAP S/4HANA. So basically the source to pay core model included leading practices of tax solution, leveraging one source indirect tax determination by integrating to SAP Ariba source to pay cloud application. So with the completion of the project, we were able to achieve that core model. And now that the future roadmaps are also getting laid out, where to have this model adopted for the rest of the Stanley Black & Decker entities.
And Purnima, just to follow up a bit, has the ability to do an integrated tax functionality had a higher level benefit? Have you been able to see automation in your business processes or more strategic flexibility and agility because of this? Is there a higher order benefit even above and beyond just getting the taxes done and the I's dotted and T's crossed?
I think that particularly helped us in these uncertain times, which is currently that we are facing. So basically this having an automated tax solution was the primary objective when we had this project. But in these uncertain times that we are facing right now, this automated solution, in fact, helped us to ensure business continuity. And having real-time calls facilitating the tax calculation with accuracy and precision without manual intervention helped the entire accounts payable transactions to occur without any interruptions. And above all, as I was mentioning, even in this pandemic times, we are able to go ahead with any future projects which has been already in the roadmap because they are not on a standstill, because we're able to leverage the standard functionalities that's provided by OneSource, and that's easier to adopt to our environment.
Chris, when you hear how Stanley Black & Decker has been able to get these higher order risk reduction benefits, do you see that more generally? Is that also the case? And are there other benefits, supply relations, for example, risk reduction? What are some of the higher order business benefits that you're seeing across your installed base or your clientele?
Well, there are many. I think there are two broad categories. I'll touch on the one that Purnima just referenced, which is more the human capital and kind of the IT side of the house. So the experience that Black & Decker is having is fairly uniform across our customer base. We're in a situation where almost every single tax department, procurement department, and all the associated departments, nobody's got extra capacity walking around. We're all constrained. And so when you can bring in applications that work together like Ariba and Thomson Reuters, it helps to free up some capacity so that you can then shift those resources into more higher value add activities like the ones that Purnima was referencing for Black & Decker. And we see that across the board. We also see that we are able to help consolidate resourcing from a hardware and a technology standpoint. So that's a benefit. And then the third benefit on the kind of the resource side is that when you are better able to track your taxation, not only do you get it right on the first time, but when it comes into areas of taxation like VAT recovery, which you have to show very stringent documentation in order to receive your money back from governments. There's also a cash benefit as well. And then on the other side, it's really more the business side of the relationship. And this is a benefit that we've really started to better understand in just in the last couple of years. Historically, folks either chose not to move forward with an application like Thomson Reuters because they felt they could handle it manually, or even worse, they'd say, oh, well, we'll just get audited, we'll pay the fine. And the cost to fix the problem is greater than the penalties or fines I might pay. But it didn't take into consideration the impact on the business relationship that you have with your vendors and your suppliers. And if you think about every time you've had a tax issue between them, and then in the case in many European countries and around the world where VAT recovery would not allow that supplier to recover their taxation because of a challenge they might have had with their buyer, that hurts your relationship. And that ultimately hurts your ability to do commerce with that partner and in general with any partner around the world. So the top line impact is something we've really started to focus in as a value, and it's something that company really drives business for companies.
All right. Well, as we're approaching the end of our time, I wanted to take a quick look to the future as to what might come next when you combine a platform and a network like Ariba and SAP have with the data and insight that a Thomson Reuters has. Let's start with you, Purnima. What would you like to see next? Is there a level of more intelligence, more automation? Where do you think that this can take you as a consumer of these services when we have an even better opportunity to use this technology?
So Stanley Black & Decker is basically a global company spanning across more than 60 countries. And we do have a wide range of products, including tools, hardware, security, and so on. So irrespective of these challenging times, basically all our priorities regarding the safety of the employees and the families, and also keeping the momentum of business continuity, responding to the needs of the community. So these are all been remaining as a top consideration. So we feel that we are already equipped technology-wise where we can keep the business up and running. And also what we are looking forward is that as the world tries to move along to come back to the vision of coming back to the earlier normal life, we are also striving forward to provide the pioneering products with intelligent solutions.
All right. Before we go to Sean to wrap up, Chris, where do you see this technology and the use of data going next, and intelligence being brought to bear, and perhaps even helping people reach a new normal or create entirely new markets?
Yeah, from a Thomson Reuters standpoint, we largely focus in on helping businesses work with governments at the kind of the intersection, if you will, of regulation and commerce. So as a result of that, we have for decades, and Purnima, you got me beat. We're 100 plus years, but I don't have the exact number on our age. But over that period of time, we've amassed an extensive amount of content in categories around risk and legal and tax and several other functional areas as well. And what we're relentlessly focused on now is how do we best open up that content and free it, if you will, from our applications. And what we're finding is that when we can leverage ecosystems like SAP Ariba, we can leverage APIs and provide a more free-flowing path for our content to reach our customers. When they're able to use it in the way they'd like to use it, the number of use cases and possibilities is infinite. We see now all the time our content being used in ways we would have never imagined, and our customers are benefiting from that. And that's a direct result of corporations coming together and suppliers and software companies freeing up their platforms and making things more open, and the customers benefiting. I think it's great.
All right, Sean, last word to you. When you hear your partner and your customer describing what they want to come next, how can we project a new vision of differentiation when you combine network and ecosystem and data?
Well, let me pick up where Chris said, free, open. And what we had said earlier is that now that we're in the cloud and now that we are able to, if you will, digitize on a global basis, that the power for us is that we know that we can't do it all ourselves. We also know that we have an amazing opportunity because we have grown our network across the globe, 192 countries, 4 million registered buyers or suppliers. And like I said, conducting a tremendous amount of commerce and data flow, and being able to open up, as Chris said, and being able to be an ecosystem, a platform way of thinking. That is the power. And like Chris said, it is amazing the number of things that you never realized were possible. But once you open up, and then once you unleash a great developer experience, if you will, to be able to extend our solutions, to be able to provide data, the use cases are immense, and it's an incredible thing to see. And so I think that's what it's really all about is unleashing the power of that ecosystem, not only to help drive innovation, but also ultimately to help drive growth, and then ultimately for the end customer, a better end-to-end process and end-to-end solution. So it's an amazing time. Thanks, Dana.
Well, thank you, and very good. Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a sponsored Briefings Direct discussion on reducing risk and increasing cost efficiency as businesses grapple with complex and often global taxation management challenges. And we've learned how the payoffs to gaining such a full and data-rich view of compliance spend patterns reduces errors, enables new business efficiencies, and leads to better strategic spend management and thinking. So a big thank you to our guests. We've been here with Sean Thompson, Executive Vice President of Network and Ecosystem SAP Procurement Solutions. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you, Dana. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. We've also been here, of course, with Chris Karlstead, Head of Strategic Accounts, Partnerships, and Alliances at Thomson Reuters. Thank you so much, Chris.
Dana, thank you. I've really enjoyed the time with you.
And also, and lastly, we've been here with Purnima Sadanandan. She's P2P IT Business Systems Lead at Stanley Black & Decker. Thank you so much, Purnima.
Thank you, Dan. I enjoyed the conversation.
And of course, a big thank you to our audience as well for joining this Briefings Direct Modern Digital Business Innovation discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of SAP-sponsored Briefings Direct discussions. Thanks again for listening. Please do come back next time and feel free to share this information with your IT and business communities.